Kia ora and welcome to the Niggly Nishcast. It's the Diggity Doodah, Dr. Peptide Panther, Mr. Slippers here. Crack of dawn in 2020 with the wobbly wildcard. Hi, Ramai to 2020. Mr. Wildcard, how go thee?
Yeah, Happy New Year. 2020, eh? It's exactly the same as 2019, but we get to write a different number on the calendar, so yeah, party on.
Bit more of a symmetrical number. I don't know if it's
is,
symmetrical,
yes,
but it's got a certain vibration to it, the old 2020.
Well, there is a 2020 World Cup as well. That's nice and symmetrical.
If we could wildcard, let's just take a moment to remember the old Stanford 2020.
But not Mr. Stanford.
No, apparently he was a bit of a geezer, but the just the competition, like I think that's for me where T20 cricket kind of started. Like you look around the world, there's bigger tournaments, there's glitz and glams. I generally don't really give a shit about the IPL, so it just feels like a natural marriage. The old Caribbean, and then you had that 2020. The whole situation was lit, except for Mr. Stanford himself.
Yeah, the old 2020, what do you even call that? That little sting thing they had was iconic. But I think we're missing a very important key step earlier, which is Martin Crowe's max cricket. Double points down the ground if you hit a six within the double. What was it? It was a double zone, or did that work? Was there any boundaries?
The max zone.
The max zone. That was what they called it. Did you get double runs if you ran two down there? Did you get four? I can't remember how that worked. If you got caught on the boundary, were you out twice?
If a wide went down the leg side into the max zone, you get double your wides.
All no balls would have been bowled from within the max zone, wouldn't they? Down the bowler's end. They did actually have two run no balls for a while there, eh? While they were toying with free hits and trying to figure out ways to stop bowlers bowling no balls, as if it was such a absolute crime against the sport. When you get the free hit thing is a decent enough idea, but I mean, if you bowl a no ball, you have to bowl it again anyway, so it's already being punished. I don't know why people worried too much about that or whatever.
We're going to do a fair amount of just critical bitching and moaning in the coming podcast about the Blackcaps series of Tour of Australia. We might have done a podcast after the first test.
Yeah, we did. And I think we did a preview of the second test as well.
Yeah, so we haven't discussed what has happened in Australia in terms of Kiwis being ravaged by Australians in the cricket field for three tests, in fact. But considering we're going to do a whole lot of critical analysis in the coming moments, why don't we start with old Martin Crowe and his offsider Ross Taylor, who is now the best test batsman Aotearoa's ever seen, and he passed the record of Stephen Fleming, I think it was.
It certainly was.
Which is a pretty amazing little feat. Do you have any thoughts on the career or this moment in time for Ross Taylor wildcard, especially considering a lot of people, they might come to these records and they might break these records over the course of their career, but I don't think many are going to do stuff the way Ross Taylor has done in terms of getting better at this stage of his career. A lot of his numbers have taken a massive boost in the previous 2 to 3 years, pretty much conveniently around that eye surgery he had prior to the last tour to Australia, I think it was, or during the last tour to Australia. And he's kind of he's hit a next level at this stage of his career, which to me is the most amazing thing about Ross Taylor. He's my favourite batsman ever. He ranks highly in your favourites as well. What do you reckon?
There's not too much else to say about the dude, eh? He's just he's top class, he's a great dude, he's an icon of Kiwi cricket, he's a guy who maybe hasn't always got the recognition he deserves, but I think at this stage in his career, everyone's pretty everyone's pretty well, no one's sitting on the fence about Ross Taylor. We all know what a legend of the sport in this country he is and around the world and all this, and Yeah, it's just a beautiful moment to see him break that record, because he needed, I think, like 78 or 79 runs or something like that for this series, and he had 6 attempts to bat. He was one of the few guys to be able to bat in every innings that the Blackcaps had for various reasons, but. Oh mate, he scraped through there, just to get those. I think where are we? He's got 152 runs for the. Oh yeah, I was thinking of that after the first test, of course. He's got 152 runs for the series, and I think ended up 2 runs ahead of Stephen Fleming. So yeah, he really only just got there in the end, but beautiful moment, and nice to see him do it in a big occasion kind of test as well, and to give the Blackcaps at least something to savour from the batting side of this series, because there wasn't a whole lot else. But yeah, shout out to Ross Taylor, because he's a legend of the game.
He sure is, but unfortunately, he was the second best batsman for the Blackcaps with a glorious average of 25.33. And that's pretty much the crux of the issue here. If we're looking overall in the series, the Blackcaps scored over 200 runs on 2 occasions. They never scored over 300 runs. And I don't know, like, from my perspective, wildcard, yesterday I walked a fine line of, like, it's been kind of difficult to write about what's happened, just because there's so many nooks and crannies of weird little shit that's gone on, and so it's hard to, I guess the challenge as a writer is being able to kind of compartmentalize or blend it into something that makes sense and can be read and isn't just a regurgitated shit pile out of my mind, which it often feels like, and it kind of felt like that yesterday. But there was also, I realized, a lot of the stuff that I said in my preview manifested. And like, there's no point celebrating when that happens. Like, you're probably the same. When shit that you say is likely to happen happens, it's just like kind of okay. When you're in this business, you don't really celebrate or feel like vindicated. You just kind of note it down in your little mental notebook that you got some stuff right, and you keep it moving, because you're going to get shit wrong a lot of the time as well. But like, just stuff like Henry Nicholls, Henry Nicholls. He was in a wee bit of a form slump coming into the series. Hadn't hit a 50 in a couple of innings. I think I had 5 innings for Henry Nicholls, which was the longest stretch of his test career without a 50. And he was in it.
He had 4 more to that
coming
now.
into Australia, a place where he's never toured before. So what does Henry Nicholls do? He averages 15.25 across 4 innings. And then you had Jet Raval. Obviously, he hasn't played a test in Australia either, and he was also in a form slump. Both of those dudes struggle. So just stuff like that happened. And I also said, wildcard, I might have told you a couple of times as well, the only way the Blackcaps are going to win tests in Australia or win the series is with the first 11 playing the majority of the time, because there's this fine line where people are bemoaning the lack of depth in Aotearoa, which is true, but then I'm also a strong proponent, and the way I finished my little write-up yesterday was a very positive thing, because we're seeing the quality of depth that is in New Zealand cricket start to filter through to the test team. So it's a fine line. That's a different discussion. We'll move on to that later on, but with Trent Boult bowling 40 overs, the Blackcaps are never going to win a test. That's never going to happen. So as soon as that first 11, as soon as a piece is removed from the Blackcaps' first 11, expectations have to change dramatically, because me and you both know that their success has been predicated on beating up weaker teams in New Zealand. So if that's the case, when shit gets harder, you're going to need your first 11 playing cricket. And that didn't happen, and the Blackcaps lost 3-0. Now, it's one thing to say that Trent Boult only bowled 40 overs, but then the batsmen were fairly mediocre. Let's be straight up the guts here. Didn't score over 300. Never once looked like batting to save a test, which was, from a dramatic perspective, the worst thing about this test series was just watching the batting lineup crumble when fighting for a draw was like a plausible, feasible option. But from my perspective, as soon as you lose a piece of the first 11 in this Blackcaps team against Australia, in Australia, and or Kane Williamson is averaging 14 with the bat, you're never going to win a test. So that's where I come to a point where I'm not even that agitated about what has happened in Australia, because I can sympathise with the team and even Gary Stead in saying that when you don't have your strongest team and you're coming up against a rampant Australian team, you're going to struggle. Like, that's just the straight up and down, no bullshit, what is going to happen. That is the reality of how cricket is going to be played out, and it's pretty much exactly what happened.
Yeah, mate, like, there's so many weird aspects of the series. Like, it just looking back and trying to get my head around it and understand what happened, it's just, there's so much that, just stuff that I just felt like, I know this has been a narrative that a lot of people have chucked out during and since that series about the Blackcaps just having no luck. And it's sort of true. Like, they really couldn't catch a break throughout the entire series. Just like from some of the, like, I guess a highlight version of this is the way Tom Latham was given out in the final innings, where it looked like the ball was going a mile down leg, gets a dodgy umpire's call that shouldn't really have been given. It didn't look that bad. It was one of those sort of let's hurry up and get this done kind of decisions. And then of course he reviews it and it's like clipping leg stump, which doesn't actually mean it's clipping leg stump. It just means it's within the margin of error to where the whatever they call it, the ball tracking can't say definitively, like there's a couple centimeters or whatever where it could have been going either way because of the margin of error of the technology. So what it's actually just saying is they can't confirm for sure that it wasn't hitting the stumps. So yeah, it's like little awkward ones like that. But then at the same time, you've also got like Glenn Phillips and Jeet Raval reviewing ones where they clearly edged it. Tiny little feathers, but still, like, I have trouble falling back on that because I see all the evidence and I see like the illness that strikes the camp. Like, what the hell else? What have you done to deserve this? Like, and not just illness that strikes the camp, but takes out the captain as well. Like, the Blackcaps just been like, black cats at the hotel or something like that, walking under ladders, like someone broke a mirror. What's going on here? But I also like just firmly believe that you do, and like, hey, let's chuck in the injuries as well. Lockie Ferguson didn't last. I mean, there was a bowler injured in every test, wasn't there? Lockie Ferguson didn't last the first innings. Trent Boult broke a hand in the second one, having not been fit to play the first. He was then out of the third, and Matt Henry comes in. He breaks a hand as well. Like, just so many little things like that, and then this is even before getting into the way that Blackcaps approached the series. But like, I just sort of, I have to believe you make your own luck, and the Blackcaps just like, especially when it comes to umpires calls, like umpires calls, you can't complain about that because it comes about from Australia just having weight. Like, if you appeal 30 times more a day, you're going to get more LBWs and whatever given because you're just creating more chances. It's about pressure. It's about like applying that pressure in the right ways, and Australia just masters at that. And a bit awkward that we came up against an Australian team that has been, off their game a little bit perhaps in the last couple of years in Test cricket, but here suddenly they're just looking absolutely imperious. Like Marnus Labuschagne coming in all of a sudden, and apparently he's just the best batsman in the world now. Like, no one had heard of him 6 months ago. Just getting Pat Cummins is basically Glenn McGrath 2.0 at this point. Like, he can hit a dime on the pitch, just 6 balls in a row, 30 overs in a row all day. Like, Mitchell Starc, we know exactly what he can offer. Nathan Lyon knows how to turn the ball and pick up wickets just consistently. Like, Hazelwood gets injured and comes Pattinson, who takes 6 wickets in Melbourne. Like, just just that team's, and Travis Head as well, getting a big 100 to cement his spot there. That Warner and Burns partnership up the top looking really good. Like Steve Smith batting great. It's just that team is so good, and that team's wiping the floor with anyone in Australia. Like if India went to Australia, they are going to Australia, aren't they? But I don't know that they're playing Test. I'm not sure. Like they would struggle heavily, and that's the best Test team in the world. Like just Test cricket is one of those things where it's skewed so much between home and away, and like the measure of a great team is being able to win Test matches away from home, because it's such a different prospect, home versus away. And I think if Australia played New Zealand in New Zealand, it would be a lot more even. It would be a lot more settled. But New Zealand going to Australia at this point, I think there were a lot of people, maybe in hindsight, I was one of them, I thought we could certainly compete and do very well here because we had such a good team. But in hindsight, maybe not so much. But it also does come back to the point you made, and that's 100% true, is we never had a settled and sturdy team, and there were a couple reasons for that. Injuries, they happen. It's difficult. You got to get through those. But just the nature of the Blackcaps in recent times is there hasn't been a lot of rotation in that squad. So when you do lose Trent Bolt, there isn't really a contingency plan, and maybe there never would be, because Trent Bolt's just an elite player who, at that sort of like level of things, you can't really replace those guys. Like perhaps Australia kind of did throughout the series, but like Josh Hazlewood was their third best bowler. I would argue third, maybe even fourth best. And he's a great bowler too. So that says a lot about what their bowling lineup is up to. But New Zealand just don't have another Trent Bolt. So yeah, like that's, what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do. You just got to sort of filter your expectations through that. And yeah, against Australia in Australia, which was already going to be awkward. Yeah, if you don't have your best 11, you're buggered, really.
And that is evident in other little ways as well, because every little slither of Test experience that you take out of your team, it shows up in like fielding intensity, for example. There's a certain intensity that you have to play Test cricket with. There's a level that you have to maintain over 5 days. That's why it's a fucking nightmare to be a part of, because you have to maintain Test level intensity over 5 days. So when you are digging into your depths, which New Zealand actually did quite well, like they just pulled out some cricketers to play Test cricket, like that many people might not have seen or heard in the Test frame before, which is a good thing. But when those players have to go out and field, they don't do it with the same intensity because they've never done it before. So I think that shows up as well. So then you've got like little scenarios where, respect to him, but Kyle Jamieson is your sub fielder. Now, he's a dude who stands over 2 meters tall and he's a bowler. And without being too judgmental of Mr. Jamieson, probably not ranked among the 20 best fielders in New Zealand. So then you're inserting him as your sub fielder, and I think all these little things have a impact on the intensity that you are playing with. So if you lose a bowler, then a sub fielder has to field the whole day. If that sub fielder is Matt Henry, it's okay, because Matt Henry's been around Test cricket for a long time now. I don't know how long he's going to be around Test cricket moving forward, but he's been around, he knows the intensity. But then if you're relying on Todd Astle and Will Somerville as your extra fieldsmen, or they have to field in general, like it takes away the intensity and the mana of the Blackcaps. You, for a brief moment there, you sounded like you were suggesting the Blackcaps lost this Test series 3-zip due to luck. I know you weren't, but it was just a funny little...
yeah, sure. But
halfway through that, I was like, are you sure? But while you're saying that, this is perhaps where a good place where we can take the meat of this discussion.
Yeah, because I have a theory that I can bring that back round to, but I want to hear what you say first.
Well, we both know you make your own luck.
100%.
And what has happened, and I wrote this yesterday, is we have outlined a lot of little weird shit that's happened at the hands of New Zealand cricket, and specifically selections and decisions made around the Blackcaps, and our insights, which have apparently been well respected by our readers and our viewers. They appreciate our perspective on these matters. Fortunately or unfortunately, that has coincided with the Blackcaps performing pretty well. So whether it's Test series in New Zealand, across the different formats, the Blackcaps have generally won cricket games, which, for example, is why some people viewed them as the second best Test nation in the world. A record pretty much based on what they do in New Zealand, which is farcical. And then we had the World Cup. So before the World Cup, me and you both were fairly realistic about the Blackcaps' chances based on the fact that there was very little actual planning and preparation for the World Cup. Now, somehow, the Blackcaps pulled out of their ass a World Cup final tying performance. And over the course of a month or two, they somehow made it to the World Cup final. So instead of gazing a more critical eye on some issues that we both predicted would hinder the Blackcaps at the World Cup, that was all papered over. There was a veil put in front of that, and we celebrate the Blackcaps. Somehow they did what they did, which to me is more an example of the, and I'll say this, and everyone else can kind of come to a conclusion with regards to why I'm saying it. Like, I think the World Cup reflected immensely positively on Kane Williamson and Gary Stead, because they did what they did without any genuine common sense support from selectors and people scheduling and stuff like that. I think in the World Cup bubble, they did the best they could, and they got the Blackcaps to a final. So now we have the situation where the Blackcaps have been a bit of an illusion, that their performances have hidden over a bunch of serious issues that we have both noted for a long time. And those issues were present prior to this Test series, whether it was naming one squad for 2 Test series, or continuing to ignore the fact that no one in New Zealand has any fucking clue who the best spinner in New Zealand is, because spinners just come and go through the revolving door. Insert selection query here. Like, they're all over the place, whether it's Jeet Raval, whatever it is. So it just feels like this was a point where maybe the illusion was exposed, and that is a case of you make your own luck. Like, when it's just the same as a batsman who's out of form, he's not going to have any luck. He's going to fucking edge everything. His front pad is a magnet, and if he does edge one onto his pads, he's going to be given LBW. That's just how it is when you're out of form. And when you have perhaps stacked up so much bullshit, at some point the weight of that has to have an impact on the cricket. And I think that's what we've seen. So to kind of package this discussion, do you have like any other specific examples recently of, or do you want to talk more in depth about specific examples? Because this is what I didn't say yesterday, which perhaps I should have, but just getting into more detail about like why we have this perspective of just weird niggly shit happening around the Blackcaps. Like, can we get in some details and tell our listeners why we have this viewpoint, and perhaps with a more specific recent gaze at it?
Yeah, well, the reason we sort of have been banging this drum for a while is because it's been going on for a while, and it's just one of those things where, like, and this is another reason also why I know Gary Stead is involved in the selecting of squads. Craig McMillan pointed this out on Twitter actually a few weeks ago. The coach and the main selector select the squads, and then the coach and the captain select the 11s for each game. So Kane Williamson, for example, isn't picking squads. Gary Stead is involved in those conversations, but this goes back further. You think about the absolute disaster preparation for the Champions Trophy a couple of years ago. You think about back when was it 2016, I think, when Ross Taylor was dropped from the 2020 team for no reason, and then told he was injured, and then not allowed to go play Big Bash when he wanted to. He was trying to play for the Blackcaps 2020 team the whole time. This has just been a bit of a recurring thing throughout the last few years for the Blackcaps, but they've got some great players, and it's 3 or 4 just world-class guys in this team, and those kind of players are going to lift you up. They're going to carry the sort of more sort of middling guys in that team. They're going to help, someone like Colin de Gronholm, for example, whose his selection for a long time was one of those ones where a lot of people probably got quite upset about it. It's like, what is this dude even doing here? I was one of them initially. I was just he came in and got a bunch of wickets against Pakistan first morning of his test debut, and it's like, well, he's never going to do that again. And he never has done that again. He settled into a very different role to what he showed that time. But at the same time, I at this point am going to defend my boy Colin to the bloody hills and back, because I actually think he does a really crucial role in this Blackcaps test team, just specifically thinking of the test team. And ironically, the role that he performs, being a number 7 batsman who can alter the course of the game with some aggressive batting, but also in recent times showing a little bit more application. We didn't see a huge amount of that against Australia, but he has shown it against England, for example, and a couple other series, mostly at home, but that's mostly because he's only played at home. And this is probably a factor actually we should throw out, is that the Blackcaps you remember they went more than a year or something like that without playing an away series. I think they went to India at one point in 2017, mid-year 2017, and then we didn't have an away series for ages until the UAE, and then we've had Sri Lanka since then, which was only 2 tests pretty close after the World Cup, so not ideal preparation, and then Australia here. They just haven't played a lot of test cricket away from home in recent times. De Gronholm and Raval are 2 of the guys who have suffered a lot from that, because they came into the team at the time when we were mostly only playing at home, so things were a little bit clouded. But they have also gone in different directions, those 2, because I think de Gronholm settled in really nicely, and what he offers with the bat, and then what he offers with the ball, bowling economically and chipping in with the odd wicket, this is literally exactly what Mitchell Santner is supposed to be in the team for. Colin de Gronholm is already doing what Santner is being picked to do, so at that point, when Santner's only batting at 8, I mean, we can come back around to that idea, but it just shows why it's another selection thing of recent times where it doesn't quite add up. And I think who selects the selectors, Gavin Larson's performance as selector in this tour was a bit of a culmination of just little things that didn't really affect overall things, but maybe kept the Blackcaps from being full potential. I don't know, could they have won that World Cup if they were a little bit more secure in what they were going to do with the opening position throughout the tournament, rather than dropping Colin Munro and then bringing him back in right on the brink of the World Cup because, it was too late, we couldn't find anyone else, not knowing what you're doing with your spinners and all that kind of thing. Maybe that would have made just that little bit of difference. Maybe, I don't know, a million things that happened in the World Cup finals to make it impossible to say what could have swung it one way or the other, like a pendulum. But I think this was a little bit of a culmination, because picking 2 squads for one series was stupid. We saw exactly how stupid that was when you suddenly committed to Jeet Raval, who just had no form and no confidence. And really, Jeet Raval should have been under pressure a lot earlier than that, because that scoring slump didn't start against Australia, it didn't start against England. It's been an extended thing throughout the second half of his career, going back a year and a half probably. He did score 100 against Bangladesh, which I think took a bit of pressure off, but also just shadowed over what was a trend that hasn't stopped before and after, which was just he hasn't been batting for as long and scoring as many runs as he did at the start of his career when he was just getting 50s every second innings. Like, then to, I mean, we talked so much about this already in other ones, like it's in other podcasts. It's like there's a line, you want to show faith with guys who have performed in Test cricket before. You want to give them every opportunity, but you also have to have a plan. Like, you have to know what you're going to do. And bring in Tom Blundell in to open the batting, it sort of worked that first time where he got scored 100. But like, other than that, I don't know. You might disagree. Shane Warne disagrees with me, but I don't think Tom Blundell is anything like an opening batsman option you want to be carrying forward with. Maybe you have him in there for a couple more series just as a stopgap kind of thing until you can groom someone else, because you haven't even paid attention to this at this point. Like, just little things like this that have thrown the Blackcaps into a weird situation. But I will also say, like, while I'm ragging on Gavin Larson's selections here, I will also say that a lot of the players they've called up have done quite well. Like, Daryl Mitchell did well on debut. Tom Blundell did actually rise to the occasion, chucked in to open in a really difficult situation. Glenn Phillips scoring a 50 on debut. Like, guys like, we didn't see a lot of them, but Lockie Ferguson and Kyle Jamieson coming into the team. Those are guys with good potential, good ability, like guys who can be a genuine part and offer something a little bit different as well for the Blackcaps seam attack. Like, I do actually, this is the weird thing about all this, is some of the selections were ridiculous, but the end product of what we've got, and like, it was humiliating to go through that series as bad as it was, but we've sort of got to a point where I actually really like the kind of players that have stepped into the team and that were picked out of domestic cricket to come in and help things. And I think it could be a really useful shake-up to the Blackcaps, because someone like Mitchell Santner, someone like Matt Henry, someone like Jeet Raval, who haven't performed to their capabilities and whatever, and the opportunities they've had in recent times, but have been given like repeated opportunities to keep to keep playing in the case of two of them, and to keep being selected in squads in the case of Matt Henry. Like, there's pressure on that now because the playing pool's just been expanded. So in a funny way, like, this whole disaster of a series, it might have actually opened the door to the Blackcaps finding a way out of what was out of the factors that led them into this like culmination of what just happened in Australia, in a funny sort of roundabout way there.
That's exactly how I wrapped up my little writing thing yesterday.
Yeah,
and
if anyone's listening to this and they haven't read your thing from Tuesday, like, get on that right now. Like, pause this bastard and go read that first, because it's a very good wrap up of the situation we find ourselves in.
Muchas gracias. I would suggest, though, that a lot of those selections, and like, it's not just because we have been critical of Senor Larson that I now want to say that like they stumbled into those selections. Like, I don't want to use that angst towards Gavin Larson as a reason to say it's more coincidental that we are now in this position. I think there are a bunch of facts that kind of back it up, but it was like, I think like stumbling into bringing Kyle Jamieson across the ditch, stumbling into promoting Glenn Phillips, stumbling into promoting Daryl Mitchell in that role as well. But then even within that, there's some weird shit, because if you've got a batsman in Daryl Mitchell who scored 70-odd in his first test innings, and then you've got a test series in Australia where Daryl Mitchell grew up, and all we heard about Will Somerville, like, Will Somerville was only selected because of his Australian background, because he's played at the SCG before. That was pretty much it. Like, that was why Will Somerville joined the Blackcaps squad for that test. So if we use the similar logic, Daryl Mitchell grew up in Australia. Daryl Mitchell scored 70-odd in test debut. But then, requiring a batsman, they select Glenn Phillips over Daryl Mitchell, which is a little bit strange. But then you put it in a context of like Daryl Mitchell was a like-for-like replacement of Colin de Grandhomme, But if you're Daryl Mitchell, put yourself in Daryl Mitchell's shoes, you're like, well, I just played a test. I did pretty well. They need a batsman. I scored 70 on test debut. I'm pretty good at batting. There you go. So even within those, there was some little weird decisions as well, and none of which felt planned. None of which felt calculated and schemed out that we're going to integrate other players into the test team, which is part of the issue here, is that, as we've alluded to many times, there's no planning, there's no directive for this Blackcaps team to move forward. They just kind of react to scenarios, which is okay to an extent, but you want to be on top. You want to be kind of putting an intention out and then manifesting it. You want to be planning and preparing for whatever is next, and that doesn't happen with the Blackcaps. But what we do have, as you've said, is a nice little situation here. Like, we've had robust discussions about Matt Henry. We've had robust discussions about Jet Raval and Mitchell Santner. The truth of the matter is, they were in the Blackcaps primarily because of how settled the Blackcaps was. So whether it was a case like, there's been players knocking down the door for selection for the Blackcaps with Plunkett Shield performances, like Kyle Jamieson has been one of the best Plunkett Shield bowlers when he's bowled for a number of years now. Lockie Ferguson has been the best Plunkett Shield bowler when he plays for even longer. Like, these dudes aren't just popping up this season as key Plunkett Shield performers. In fact, they kind of feel like they're selected from what they do in the Super Smash, which is also very strange. But they couldn't crack into the Blackcaps squad because the Blackcaps are winning. They don't play any tests, so there's no natural flow of rotation, and they're playing easy opposition in New Zealand, so no one's out of form. Suddenly, everything changes, and like, I've been quite defensive around Matt Henry, for example. This is a nice microcosm. But my premise around Matt Henry was that I couldn't judge him until he's played more test cricket, because the only opportunities he's got is niggly little fucking play a test here, 6 months later play a test there, or then we got to go play a test over here and you're going to play there. Like, Matt Henry's been dealt a raw deal. But over an extended period of time, Matt Henry has not taken his opportunities at any of those little steps on the ladder. Now, the only reason this is an issue for me is because that ladder is so long now. It's happened over a long, extended period of time. And Matt Henry now has to deal with the fact that Kyle Jamieson's here, Lockie Ferguson's here, that there are seam bowlers in Aotearoa putting pressure on those spots in the Blackcap squad. Like you, I view the opening situation as far less exciting because Tom Blundell's a very good batsman, and he could work well alongside Tom Latham when you think about a left-hand, right-hand combination. Tom Latham is very compact with his hands. Tom Blundell is not. Tom Blundell plays his shots. Tom Blundell likes to be the aggressor in a situation. So if you bowl full outside off stump, he's going to hit it. If you bowl short, he's going to hit it. Now, fantastic if you're batting 5, 6, 7. If you're opening the batting in Test cricket, let's see how that goes for you. Like, we have to breed opening batsmen. We can't just develop a middle order batsman, wicketkeeper into an opening batsman. So there's intrigue around how that looks moving forward, and I would say there's far more excitement for me in terms of the batsmen coming through than specifically seam bowlers. Like, we integrated Glenn Phillips, we integrated Daryl Mitchell to the test team over recent times, and then there's that Will Young bloke who unfortunately missed out on a test debut last summer. Tom Bruce is still one of the best batsmen in the country. Tim Seifert's one of the best batsmen in the country. Devon Conway, when he's eligible, will be there. So you've got immense batting depth, and that's why I also bring up Henry Nicholls, because no one's going to talk about Henry Nicholls, because everyone loves Henry Nicholls. But in this current edition of the Blackcaps, on the 8th of January and onwards, you got to be scoring some runs. Because if you're not scoring runs, you're going to be struggling to be selected unless there are selection shenanigans, which we have absorbed plenty of. So it's a very interesting juncture, and I like the juncture. I like where we are right now. It's, for many, around Aotearoa and around the world, there's a very negative vibe because people don't know anything about cricket in Aotearoa. People don't know anything about what's happening at domestic cricket. People don't know anything about how teams are being selected for the Blackcaps. People don't know perhaps the culture around cricket in New Zealand and how stuff has happened. People only see World Cup final. People only see second best test playing nation in the world. So those people are dealing with the shock of what has happened. Whereas living in the layer of nuance and insight below that, none of this is overly surprising, and most of it is highly exciting. And I'd also... Do you have any points to add to that, Wildcard?
Yeah, well, sort of. I mean, this is as good a time as any to chuck in that theory I sort of teased before, which is that watching a lot of this series and just watching Australia just put the pressure on and crush the Blackcaps really throughout all three tests. Just like every little 50-50 moment went their way because they demanded it so. But then also it's sort of, learnt a little bit of a lesson about Test cricket, which contrasts a little bit with how the Blackcaps went at the World Cup. Because how they went at the World Cup was they sort of just hung in games. They settled for, okay, we're not going to score 300 like some of these other teams have decided is the benchmark, like the minimum. We're just going to say, well, we know how to bowl to an 80% level, where if you take risks, we can get you out, but maybe we won't be able to work you out, but we're happy with this, with the way that run rates work, the 50 over constriction and all this. We're going to settle for 220, and we're going to make it very hard for you to chase those runs. And it worked for them against India in the semi-final beautifully. The way they got to the semi-final was sort of a bit of a... they beat the teams they were expected to beat, and they lost to teams they had a little bit of a losing streak in there. It's easy to forget that, but I think a lot of teams weren't fully settled at that World Cup, which helped the Blackcaps just being a settled lineup and a better one-day team than they are a test team, I think, as well. Because you look at the spinning situation is not a drama there. The opening situation, it's exactly the same. Actually, Munro versus Raval. You have Guptill, who didn't score a lot of runs at the World Cup, but you did have Taylor and Williamson scoring all right. Williamson batting very well throughout, and the one-day team is quite solid. They know what they're doing. They've played a lot of one-day cricket. That is a format which we do have success away from home, being able to win series and stuff like that. So just by hanging in games, they were able to do pretty well and get themselves to a position where they might have just a little bit more luck, a little bit more, fortune of the gods or whatever. They might have won a Cricket World Cup. They at least didn't lose the final, even if they didn't get to win the trophy. The nature of Test cricket, this sort of the lesson I've learned over the last couple of weeks, is that Test cricket isn't like that. You can't just hang in. If you're losing, it's one of those things where the scales tip very quickly. When you start to lose by a lot. And it reminded me, it's the summer months that we're going through. Summer months at the beach reminded me of being younger, getting out the board games and stuff like that now and then with the cousins. And I don't know, Doc, if you've partaken in a lot of Monopoly during your time, have you?
Bits and bobs.
Bits and bobs, yeah. It was never one of my favorite games because nowadays I could chuck out a whole lot of critiques about capitalism and stuff like that and why it's a cruel game. But when you're playing it as a youngster, it's one of those things where, like, once someone starts to win, they very quickly start to win by a lot. You know, once the first hotel goes up and you land on that son of a bitch, like, you're done for. And when you start to lose, therefore, you really start to lose. And that's why it's cruel, because it swings so deeply. Test cricket's a lot like that. Like, once you start to lose, you don't get a lot of close losses in Test cricket. You know, they tend to be pretty hefty because it's just so hard to pull yourself up out of that. Like, if you get a first innings deficit, the amount of work it takes to be able to overturn that, especially when it's like, it's the variables are a little slimmer when it's a nice bowling wicket and you can take a lot of wickets, but we could never get through their top order, Australia's top order in this series. So, and when we did get one wicket, we never got two. You know, there was always a partnership. Even if it was just a 30-40 run partnership, it was enough to just drag the game out, add a few more runs, pile it all up, and just that leads to more and more pressure, and that's why it was so tough for the Blackcaps to, like, once they start losing, and they really start losing, and everything piles on like that. And that's why I think, like, we're not the second best Test nation in the world, but I do think we might be the third. Like, beyond India and Australia. I mean, we just beat England pretty handsomely in New Zealand. They were missing James Anderson. Like, there's a couple factors where England obviously weren't at their best. I don't think their preparation was fantastic, but I do think we could still, like, regardless of the nature of this series, I still think we're a pretty good Test team. And if we can shake out a few of the issues that have been exposed in this one, I think we could become an even better Test team as well. And the other thing I'll chuck out here is I don't know what they're going to do with openers, and I think it's going to be very interesting. I think Blundell just might have to open against India in the next series because there's already no contingency plan, so I don't know what else they can do, really. Going to be pretty interesting when the Plunket Shield comes back up to see if any batsmen who've been batting like 4 or 5 decide suddenly that they're going to open for their domestic teams, because, hey, if you're like a fringe batsman in New Zealand at the moment, that's how you're going to get into the Blackcaps. Like, we've already seen there's a bit of a queue for numbers 3, 4 and 5 in the batting order, but if you want to make the Blackcaps Test team and you reckon you know how to leave a ball outside off stump, I would be begging my coach right now to say, why don't you give me a chance to open the next couple rounds? We'll see how it goes. Hamish Rutherford, though, I think is, well, I don't know that he's a great option, but he is a option, and the reason I chuck his name out is because he opened for the New Zealand A team that played against England a couple months ago. Also in that team were Tom Blundell, Kyle Jamieson, Glenn Phillips, Daryl Mitchell, and Will Somerville, all of whom were the guys who were called up from outside of the squad during the last 2 series. So I think there's a little bit less than a coincidence in the fact that those things have occurred. I do think there's a little bit of a hierarchy there of the way that went. So some planning, I suppose, we can chuck out of that one. But yeah, I also Will Somerville didn't do a whole lot during this series, but he really should have been there from the start. Like, if you're going to pick him for the Sydney Test because he's played in Sydney, well, you might as well pick him for all 3 tests because he's played in all of those ones. But I don't know. But we might have to save the spinning debate for another day because that's quite a hefty one to get into right now. There's a lot of mud to be trudged through before we come to any kind of conclusions on that matter.
Definitely. You almost spun me into a web trying to organise my own thoughts there. I had a flood of spinning thoughts into my mind.
I will say, like, just off the top of the head, without thinking about it too much, Mitch Santner or Todd Astle?
Mitchell Santner every day.
You reckon? In the Test team?
Yeah,
I'm
not a fan of Todd Astle. Todd Astle looks like someone who shines when no one knows who he is, and then I think people can be like Mitchell Santner, but in a different way, be seduced by what Todd Astle does in limited opportunities. If Todd Astle's playing consistent cricket, he's not going to go well.
I do agree with everything you just said, and I'm also like, it's not that I'm not a fan of Todd Astle, it's just that I've never seen anything to justify why he's in this conversation. Like, I don't think he is in the top 3 Test spinners we could have picked for that series, but I do think he's better than Mitch Santner in Test match cricket.
Yeah, we'll stop there. We'll stop there, and we'll do a specific spinning discussion podcast in the coming
There's your
week.
teaser,
I
folks.
suggest. What may be an interesting place to finish here, Wildcard, is taking a bit more of a broader look, because I am of the belief that this perhaps moment of change in the Blackcaps and around the Blackcaps is going to be a bit more widespread than many people are thinking, because at the moment we have Super Smash Cricket Wildcard. And throughout this Super Smash, I have repeatedly, it's a bit stink. I'm out here highlighting how guys are struggling. I don't like to do that, but I think it's important because we have a World T20 coming up, and we have guys who have been struggling over the course of... they played T20s in Sri Lanka, and then they played T20s against England, and now they're in the Super Smash. So these guys that I'm talking about, it's not like they are just having a mediocre Super Smash. These guys have struggled in recent T20 cricket for New Zealand. Specifically, Colin Munro with the bat. I won't do a deep... I've written about this ad nauseum, so you can go check out any previous series stats. Sri Lanka, England series. Point being here is Colin Munro is averaging 23 from 6 innings in the Super Smash. He is ranked as the 21st top run scorer in the Super Smash. That is what many people consider one of the best T20 batsmen in the world. And trust me when I say that he struggled in Sri Lanka and then he struggled against England. Same case for Ishodi. He has 7 wickets at an average of 33.85, and he took 3 of those wickets in one innings. So there's been innings where he's gone 1 wicket or no wickets. He's ranked 15th in the Super Smash. Now these aren't horrible for the average T20 cricketer in New Zealand, but these are significant, because usually these dudes go back to Super Smash cricket and they absolutely dominate. They're not doing that now. And they didn't perform well against England. They didn't perform very well against Sri Lanka. So now we have a situation where some key figures in the T20 team aren't exactly commanding further selection for the Blackcaps T20 team, which is a bit of a... And to add to the spinning discussion, wildcard, Ajaz Patel is tied for leading wicket taker in the Super Smash.
Best spinner in the country,
according to some. We have a bit of a situation where the changes that we're talking about with the test team, or just a natural integration of different players into the group, that might flow into the T20 team as well, because Conway, Seifert, Bruce, they're all in the top 5 for runs, so they're making a significant play at selection. Martin Guptill's having a pretty good Super Smash. Jimmy Neesham's doing well. He's averaging 51 with the bat, and he's averaging 17 with the ball. That's bloody handy. There's a lot of... one player who is also struggling is Mr. Seth Rance. Sporadic T20 Blackcap. He is averaging 45 with the ball. And Will Somerville won't be playing T20 cricket for New Zealand anytime soon. He's averaging 117. I would say that just to raise a little idea, plant a little seed here, wildcard, that interesting times ahead for the Blackcaps T20 team. I think the series against India is headlined by a whole lot of T20 cricket. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it begins with at least 3, and it might even be 5, I'm not sure, but we do play a lot, even not just that series, we play a lot of 2020 cricket between now and the end of the 2020 World Cup. It's very much going to be a bit of, probably the main focus for the Blackcaps over the course of this year, up until when's the World Cup, October or something like that, about a month or 2 after Devon Conway becomes eligible for the Blackcaps, conveniently. Throw that one out there. But yeah, lots of 2020 cricket. So they're going to have plenty of opportunities to give a lot of these guys runs and actually do what they didn't do properly leading into the 50 over World Cup, and work out what their best 11 is going into the tournament, so it's ready before they have to play knockout games at the end of the tournament.
Also, Scott Kugelheim, recent T20 Black Cap, averaging 52 with the ball. So you've got a bunch of cricketers who really want to play World T20 by the looks of things, and you've got some other cricketers who are struggling to build their resume, who are struggling to take their Super Smash exploits further to the next level and command Blackcaps T20's selection. So I just want to say that right now before we move into this T20 situation, because those are how stats are at this juncture, and it's going to be bloody interesting to see how Blackcaps T20 teams are selected based around how we view the rationale of selections with regards to the Blackcaps.
I'm low-key interested in this, proper interested, because it's the way they pick the 2020 team generally for the most part is it's sort of just like a gateway into international cricket, and a lot of the guys you've mentioned like Ranson, Kugelheim, I think fall into that category where it's just like giving them a bit of a taste and seeing what's for, and Blair Tickner's another one, and there's a bunch, there's heaps of these guys who have been in this situation. And not ordinarily, I actually think that's the right thing to do. I think that's the way to treat 2020 cricket. Is just it's not on the same par as the ODIs or the Test stuff. It's not there's a hierarchy here, and the longer the format, the more prestigious it is. But leading into a World Cup with this many games and stuff like this, you got to take it a little more seriously, and to take it seriously, you need to treat it as its own format and not pick guys who you're thinking of for other formats. You need to cloud out everything that everyone has ever done in 50 over or test match cricket or first class cricket and look purely at 2020 form, because the way 2020s work is you can just put in a bunch of guys to do, guys who can score 20 off 10 and you have enough of them, you've scored 200. There you go. That's probably going to win you the game. Guys who can bowl at under 8 runs per over, and then you get enough of them and you're going to be able to defend totals. You can manufacture a Frankenstein monster kind of 2020 team just by picking the right kind of 2020 players, like specialists and stuff. And this is where it gets a bit difficult for in the last year or two, Colin Munro and Ish Sodhi, they're guys who have played, I think both of them have played all 3 formats, but I'm pretty sure Colin Munro got a test match one time. I think he might have played in South Africa.
Yeah, back in the dark ages.
Yeah, back in the dark ages, yeah. But both these guys at the moment, just the way their careers have gone, they do seem like they're probably fallen into 2020 specialist categories, which makes them perfect for what I'm just saying, except they're not playing very good cricket. So it'll be interesting to see. When I say not very good cricket, it's within the realms of possibility. Colin Munro will smash 100 of 40 balls, tomorrow. Ish Sodhi will take 6 for 15 or something. They're very capable of doing exactly that. But if they don't, it'll be interesting to see how brave the selectors are in terms of, do we want to drop some of these bigger names who maybe don't perform at a 2020 level as much as they, as to the level of their reputation just overall as Blackcaps and as cricketers. So that's going to be pretty funky. I think there's a few guys who fall. I don't want to throw Williamson and Taylor into this mix, because I think they both have a lot to offer the team, a 2020 team, even if they don't seem like specific 2020 batsmen in the way that certain other guys do. But I will say, guys I think Tim Southey is a guy who might find if he can't bowl his Yorkers, do you really need him in the 2020 team kind of thing? Is Trent Bolt best served by playing in this team, or could we get someone just to bowl Trent Bolt's, what do you call him, his super over exploits over the last 12 months haven't been glorious. So And there's a few guys who have been in maybe a little bit of an interesting position, and I don't think they're going to do this. I don't think they're going to go all in and say, like, we're just going to pick a specialist 2020 team that can actually win the World Cup. I think they're going to probably compromise to a degree, which isn't going to give us the best possibility for success. But it'll be interesting to see how the Blackcaps approach all this, because it is a unique situation, really, where 2020 for the next 6 to 8, 10 months, in a way that it never is at any other time, will actually be a little bit of a priority.
And that's why it's so interesting, because we're gonna learn a lot about the mindset, and whether because there is a bit of a cozy relationship between a lot of the people within the Blackcaps. So are we going to, as you said, is like Tim Southee going to get a free pass to the World T20, or are we going to integrate better bowlers because they're better? It's just a fascinating little situation that we're in for over the next 7 months, and the diet of T20 cricket might wear on people a bit, but I think we're going to learn a lot about the Blackcaps and New Zealand cricket, because based on what we've come from with Australia, like, things have been shaken up. Different players have come in and out of the Blackcaps test squad, which hasn't happened for the last kind of 4 to 5 years, and that's a bit of an exaggeration, maybe 3 to 4 years. And now we're in for this period of time where, once again, we're preparing for a major world tournament, and it's going to be interesting. It's just going to be interesting to see how this Blackcaps World T20 team is selected, and how they go about rewarding players in form, how they go about dealing with the old boys club, and just stuff like that. It's going to be very interesting.
Very interesting, and I think that diet of 2020 cricket, just excessive 2020 cricket, is going to become pretty grating if they don't start treating it as a separate entity and like its own unique kind of little beast there. If they don't have it on that kind of level, I think it is going to get pretty dumb if they treat these 2020, what are effectively like warm-ups for the World Cup, if they treat them the way they treated their summer of ODI cricket last year leading up to the 50 over World Cup, then that's going to get pretty dumb pretty quickly. But
what do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by treating?
Well, you know how they had all those
the,
opportunities to see, like, you knew Colin Munro was struggling as an ODI opener, but let's wait till the last series beforehand to chuck Henry Nicholls up there as like a stopgap kind of opener, and then all of a sudden we decide, oh no, we haven't given him enough time, we're not sure, we're going to go. But like, actually break the team down right now, like start from scratch and say we're going to build it up from nowhere rather than going from what they've got. And this is the opportunity now, earlier rather than later, to see how guys go, so that you can, by the end of it, come back to a cohesive unit as you hit the World Cup. So you know your best 11 and that kind of thing, you know what your squad's going to be, rather than making those decisions on the fly like they did for the 50 over World Cup, if that makes sense.
Definitely. I just wanted you to explain it for our listeners, because it's the exact same thing that we don't know if it is, but what you explained is like, this was our situation prior to the World Cup, and we were all over how weird and strange it was, and now we've had this series sweep in Australia, and now we're in store for a period leading into another major tournament where we're going to see whether they have learned or if it's the same old bullshit, and that's what is fascinating. Otherwise, that's it. We'll stop talking about the Blackcaps. Might be a few more things written about the Blackcaps, over the next few days, so check those out. All over the Super Smash, all over any football that's happening, all over any basketball, Breakers, Steven Adams, Phoenix are doing well, so there's plenty of shit popping off outside of the Blackcaps bubble. So if you fucking hate the Blackcaps, all good. Don't worry. Kia kaha, stay beautiful, and we'll catch you on the flip side.